All right.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Wall Street from Main Street podcast. My name is Mo Dode, and today's guest is a returning guest. We haven't had him on in a while. He is Andrew Henderson. He is the founder of Nomad Capitalist. Andrew is an international entrepreneur and travel, and his website, Nomad Capitalist, helps people who want to move abroad, protect their assets, and invest abroad as well. Andrew, good to hear from you again.
Hey, it's my pleasure to be with you again, Mo.
Great. I want to start off this podcast by talking about your background for our listeners that never heard of you. Can you tell us about your background a little bit? I believe you started a multi-million-dollar business at age 19. So tell us more about that.
Well, I think that there is. It's great that a lot more people are becoming entrepreneurs these days because I've always been doing it. I wrote a magazine and was selling it door to door in my neighborhood when I was 9 years old. I was selling websites door to door for real estate agents at 12. And when I was 19, I started a business that worked in the broadcasting industry, helping to connect buyers and sellers of broadcast inventory. And it did become a very successful business with Fortune 50 clients and billion-dollar accounts, billion-dollar companies, I guess. And it was a lot of fun. Eventually, I realized, hey, this is an industry that's in decline. It just wasn't something I was passionate about anymore. So I got out of that. I exited that business and started investing in other stuff. And it was kind of during that time that I realized all these years I've been traveling my entire life, really, ever since I was a few months old. And I really started to put the pieces together and realize that there's no reason I have to be investing here. I can invest in the car export business anywhere. I can invest in services businesses that do things to people's homes anywhere. I had some great successes in all kinds of businesses in the United States, but I really began to realize, I can do this anywhere. I have to believe in myself. I've been to all these places. I see the opportunity in all these different countries, and that's kind of what motivated me to figure this stuff out for myself.
So, what year did you decided to sell your business and move abroad? Were there any particular event in your life that made you decide to make a change in your life and go abroad and help people that want to invest outside the U.S. border?
Well, I think it was kind of a slow build as it is for many people. Like I said, even when I sold the business back in early 2012 or somewhere around there, it was something where I was already traveling half the time or even more. I was running the business from hotel rooms in Beijing and Budapest and wherever else. And so I just said, hey, I'm already doing a lot of the stuff from somewhere else. Even when I started the business, I knew, hey, all I need is a phone. I really realized this whole location-independent business thing very early on. I just didn't fully take advantage of it. I said, hey, well, I'll have my base of operations here, and I'll just travel. So that was the aha moment, was to realize that you can go all the way, and that, that's, for many people, that's the best way to go, and that there are a lot of advantages doing it that way.
Now, you started your business, Nomad Capitalist, at a pretty good time. Looking at the numbers for people that were renouncing their U.S. citizenship, it's up 14% in 2014 at about 3,400, which is 15 times more compared to 2008. Now, do you believe U.S. citizens need to give up their citizenship in order to live abroad due to the foreign bank not willing to do business with a American citizen due to the FATCA?
Well,
regulation.
Yeah,
I'm sure you heard of that.
Oh, absolutely. Look, it's so many people are renouncing citizenship, and look, all you have to do is walk by, or make an appointment at a U.S. embassy just to see why people hate to do business with the United States. It's funny that just not that long ago, Barack Obama came out and said that he's going to, not let the U.S. government get in the way of people whose families go and live overseas. Only he was talking about people whose family members are kidnapped by ISIS, and he wants them to be able to pay ransoms. And I thought to myself, how about the ransom that millions of Americans pay going overseas and having to pay tax no matter where they live? And so I can understand why people are getting frustrated, and they're saying it's not worth the cost of admission. The challenge, of course, that why everyone can't do it is, it's nice to have two passports even if you give up your U.S. passport. So, getting another passport plus even another one after that can be challenging, and you want to make sure they're good passports. So that's the kind of stuff that we do at Nomadic Capitalists, is help people get those passports, or at least put themselves in a position. I don't think it's something people should wake up one morning and say, I'm going to renounce my citizenship. But, for me personally, as someone who just never identified as the average American, I think it's an easier decision to make. It's just a matter of logistics, and I think being pragmatic and not letting your emotions get the best of you.
And the fact that legislation got started due to wealthy people that were moving abroad to avoid paying high taxes in the U.S. One example was one of the co-founder of Facebook, Eduardo Chavez, moved to, I believe, Singapore, and he renounced his citizenship so he can avoid paying taxes on his shares in Facebook after they went public, I believe. So the tax code in the U.S. is getting more and more complex.
It's ridiculous.
Thousands and thousands of pages.
It's out of control. And here's the thing about Eduardo Saverin. And other countries do this too. I mean, they're burning cars, Uber cars in France right now in protest. I mean, so this is not just the U.S., but the U.S. is the worst offender, Mo. I mean, here's a country where a guy was born in Brazil, was raised by a family that was, I think, already successful, was brought to the United States at a later age in his childhood, went to Harvard, which kids from all around the world do, by the way. They all go to Harvard, and was now called a traitor because he made a business decision to give up something that was no longer serving him. Listen, I have friends from Austria, from Germany, from all over the world who keep their citizenship because it does them no harm. It's tax neutral. It's everything neutral when they go and live somewhere else. The United States citizenship is not neutral, and so as a business decision, of course he should make that decision. I mean, here's a guy who could be a citizen of any country he wanted to, including his native Brazil, which isn't that bad to start with. Somehow the United States think they own him, as if he would be nothing without them. And when you look at some of the people making money down in Brazil, making money in Singapore, all the kids who fly into Harvard for 4 years, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't believe in the sovereign state. I believe anybody it's free to live anywhere they want. They want to live in America, that's fine. They want to live elsewhere, that's fine. I don't like how we have to go all through the paperwork and bureaucracy just to you get a visa, then try to become a citizen. And I think a lot of people in this country are becoming I'm very emotional on the topic of immigration due to the welfare program that we have, and that the fact that the immigrants are living off the welfare program and also not paying any taxes. Well, if you have a problem with welfare and taxes, you tell your politician to do something about the welfare program, which is pretty much bankrupt, and lower the taxes so everybody pay their fair share no matter how much you make.
Well, like they always say, politicians are the only people who will give you the shirt off your own back.
I like that. So I wanted to ask you, after the FACTA was passed, are you gaining more followers in business because of this regulation?
I think that's a microcosm. I think at the end of the day, I mean, people ultimately don't want to know what sausage is made. I think people are waking up to the idea that they want to be free. You've got a lot of different factors. From Tim Ferriss, the 4-hour work week a number of years ago, to people traveling more and more, and just the changing world and the changing tourist landscapes, and people realizing, hey, this is easier than I thought. There's all kinds of different things going into this, and I think people are saying, hey, I want a lifestyle that is total freedom. That said, I think absolutely a lot of people, especially in the United States, are saying, why is it we don't have this freedom, whether we live here or whether we live somewhere else? This seems ridiculous. Unfortunately, I think that when you live under an empire, when you live under a guy who is now a dictator, the President of the United States, it's hard to necessarily wake up to all the freedoms that you're missing out on. We're brainwashed to believe that, hey, that's the way it should be. We shouldn't be allowed just to go and do. I mean, how many people do you see going around the United States, Mo, that say, well, people shouldn't be allowed to do that? Well, I mean, thanks to the media, thanks to the government, people think the stuff that we talk about is illegal. People get freaked out. I mean, the reality is it's just about basic freedom, and there are totally legal ways to do it, but I think that, sure, we are getting more followers. It's a niche kind of thing. a large niche perhaps. But I think by and large, still, when you look at a macro view of countries like the U.S., like Australia, most people are not going to wake up to the idea that they're getting screwed.
And that's a great point. Now, I want to shift gears here and talk about your experience traveling abroad. For the past few years, you've been doing it since 2012, but you've been traveling the whole life.
Yeah, all the time.
Are there any places that you visited recently that surprised you in terms of the economic and political structure of the country? I mean, is there any country that you went to that you didn't have high expectation in terms of economic and personal freedom, but when you went there, like, oh, I think I could start a business here. It's not as bad as I thought it would be.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, Malaysia continues to impress me with the way that they do things. Obviously, my fear is that every country is very slowly moving in the wrong direction, but I think that Malaysia is doing a lot of the right things. You've got a lot of personal freedom. It's a very easy country to come and visit. You don't get harassed the way you do when you go to Western countries. I was even in Ireland, which is one of my favorite countries to go to. Everyone's so nice, and I got harassed going in about what I do. I have friends from Norway and Germany who go to the United States, and they get told, it was a Merry Christmas until you got here. So you don't get that kind of stuff in Malaysia. You're left alone. You don't see the police all over the place. In fact, I think for 2.5 years of coming here, I just saw the police writing someone a ticket for the first time the other day. So I'm a big fan in terms of a personal level here in Malaysia. I'll tell you a place that didn't surprise me because I've known about this for a long time, but I was just spending some more time recently in Georgia, and I'm doing a little bit of business there. And they just changed back their visa laws to allow pretty much everybody from around the world to get into the country visa-free for a year. And that's an incredibly free market country. They've got really innovative banking system there. There's a lot of positive stuff going on in Georgia. Very, very open. They've slashed the taxes. I mean, from 21 to 6, now I think down to 5. The 5 that are left, they're reducing the rates practically every year. So there's a lot of positive stuff there. And then I think there's opportunities all over Europe, to be honest. I know people think Europe has been left for dead, but there are some great real estate opportunities, I think. And that's the kind of stuff, again, we talk about. So,
it's funny that it's hard to do business here, but if you want to start a business in another country, it's pretty easy compared to this country. Like in China, you go to China and start a business, they won't tax you for the first 5 years, I think. Then after that, only like 15%. There's a lot more economic freedom there. And also, I have family in Germany, and they said that Americans have a easier time opening a business there compared to the Germans.
Well, I mean, I think that the United States is the biggest hypocrite in the world for one big reason, that it's really the world's biggest tax haven unless you are a U.S. person. And I have people who are foreigners who use U.S. LLCs in Delaware as pass-through entities to enjoy privacy, to enjoy all kinds of benefits. So personally, I don't want a U.S. connection. Even if I were a foreigner, I wouldn't want a U.S. connection. I think there are better banks and better opportunities and better systems elsewhere. I just don't trust the U.S. government. But, I mean, if you are a U.S. person, you're absolutely right. You can be treated better a lot of other places. And I mean, again, look at what the media was up in arms when Jeb Bush, who I'm no fan of, came out and said that Estonians can pay their taxes in 5 minutes. The first response, of course, from everybody, including those fat, clowns on CNBC, was to say, "Oh, what's Estonia? It's some little tiny, like we dropped a marble, and that's Estonia." They make fun of Estonia and Malta. I mean, they love to make fun of these smaller countries, but it's because those countries are smaller that they're driving the kind of innovation that's making people's lives easier. How much time does the average person in the United States spend doing their taxes every year? I just spent hours filling out a form about how many bank accounts I have. It's outrageous. You can do your taxes in Estonia in 5 minutes, and when you choose to leave, they stop taxing you. Maybe you should learn from places like that.
Yeah, I mean, the tax code here is getting so much complex. Yeah. I mean, even with the Obamacare, it's getting more and more difficult to figure out how much people owe and what they have to pay taxes. And there's more fees coming up in the state level, local level. at the city level as well.
None of that's going away, by the way. People, oh, we're just going to stay here until things change. We're gonna lead the change. Listen, every time you turn around, they're affirming another part of Obamacare. It's here to stay. I just read an article in the UK the other day from some alleged conservative commentator saying, well, you know, NHS does provide us some pretty cheap health care, and we need to keep it. This is the conservative side. Yes, we need to keep national health care. It's here to stay. You're not getting rid of it. You're not going back to the good old days. You're not living in the wild, wild west. If you believe that the personal freedom and the low taxes of the wild, wild west, or whatever day you beckon for, is what you want, then go and find it somewhere else, because it ain't returning to your country. It's Finland all the way from here.
And yeah, and if you look at the Republican candidates for the U.S. president, I mean, most of them don't even talk about trying to remove Obamacare, maybe except for Rand Paul, but all the other Republican candidates don't even have that on their agenda.
Listen, by the way, if the United States wants to become Finland, I'm not a big fan of democracy, but if they want to become Finland, let them go ahead. But let's just do, I mean, okay, Bernie Sanders is running. Let's do that. Let's follow his thing of we should be Europe. Everyone goes around, do you know that we're the only civilized country in the world that doesn't have whatever, fill in the blank. How about you're the only civilized country in the world, the emphasis on civilized kind of decreasing, but you're the only country in the alleged first world that taxes people no matter where they go. If you want to be Europe, let people leave. Great, have 75% taxes like France. If that's what you guys want, do it. How about you let people opt out of that system? It'll never happen. It'll never happen in a million billion years. Someone's got to pay for the wars.
Did you see his recent comments regarding all the deodorant we have, and yet we can't even help out the poor in Africa or something? He said something like that.
Right. Well, listen. At least some of these communists that are running realize that the real issue that the people on the Republican side don't realize, you have to have cuts everywhere. You can't be you can't have 13 aircraft carriers compared to the next largest army's one, and say that you're not spending too much. We have a defense problem. No, you have a defense problem because, well, you know, that's a long story. But you're absolutely right. No one's addressing the real issues. What else is new, by the way? It's been that way since you and I were in the cradle.
Right. You know, what I find ironic is that you live in Malaysia, and now Malaysia is predominantly a majority of it is Muslim. Considered a Muslim country, not part of the Middle East, but it is a Muslim country. And yet the Middle East and most of the Muslim countries are under attack for human rights and liberty and freedom. And yet you're telling me that Malaysia is a lot better in terms of personal freedom compared to the U.S.?
Well, look, I think that being left alone is the ultimate in personal freedom, and that's largely the case here. People who want to come to Malaysia, that can come and visit. It's one of the easiest processes out there because, you know, they're not here to harass people. They realize, as I always say, where their bread is buttered. They want people to come and spend money. And, yeah, I mean, listen, this is a former Commonwealth country, and this is a former British colony. And to everybody who you know starts lining up all the things, we want someplace that used to be, you know, that has the British influence and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you know, Malaysia meets all those things. Oh, but it's Muslim. I mean, these are the same people that are in the United States, you know, pining away for Rick Santorum to get elected so he can make the U.S. a Christian country, like a Christian theocracy. I mean, who cares? You know, it's Ramadan, right? People are walking around eating pork. They're walking around having drinks and drinking water and, you know, clinking glasses at the bar and what have you, and nobody cares. It's total freedom here. And, yes, in the Middle East, I have a guy who on my team who lived there for a while and said if you were to do the stuff that people were doing here, you'd be arrested. So, of course, it's different. I mean, you know, just like there are, you know, there were Christian countries in Europe that went crazy. You look, there's an allegedly Christian country in North America going crazy right now. No one wants to admit it.
Yeah, you get arrested here if you collect rainwater.
Right. I mean, you know, at a certain point, I love the people who say, well, we're going to stay here and fight when it gets bad enough. Like these people who think there's going to be like a second Revolutionary War, and they're going to take up weapons and start shooting or something. I mean, first of all, for what? Wouldn't you rather live a peaceful life? I want to be a peaceful guy. I don't want to be in a shooting war. Okay, but like, okay, when it gets bad enough, then we'll discuss like the next steps. Like, when will it get bad enough? The answer is it won't. You're just a pussy.
Well, let me let me ask you. So you talk to a lot of foreigners during your travel. How do they perceive American? Do they hate us or our government or military, or do they like American citizens but they don't like our government?
A lot of people say that. I think it's a diplomatic thing. I mean, I think that, to be honest, this is one of those questions you really can't take people at face value on, because people do the "where are you from?" and you say, "Oh, I live in Malaysia, I live in Hong Kong." Like, no, but where are you really from? And it's this programming that we have where people think, "Oh, you're white, you can't be from there." I could have been born in Hong Kong. My parents could have, been in Hong Kong or Malaysia or wherever else, but nobody accepts that. So what is their opinion on the U.S.? Nobody wants to move there, I'll tell you that. I don't hear anybody who's saying they want to move there for work, the way that Americans think everyone wants to. Some people want to go there.
So the American dream is over.
Yeah, look, it's over. Look, nobody cares anymore. It's a wide world. You've got Europe, you've got the Americas, here in Asia, people want to go to other Asian countries, people want to go to Singapore. Listen, nobody likes the U.S. government.
So, I want to shift gears here and talk about China. Now, I know you've been in China a lot. You spent a lot of time in Hong Kong and China. In the past few years, have you seen a change in terms of the economic and political structure? Because they're doing a lot of different things in terms of their own currency. Like recently, they got approved to add the yuan to the special drawing right, which is a basket of world reserve currencies. And also, they are accumulating a lot of gold in the past few years, and a lot of people are speculating that they're trying to establish some type of gold standard or something in that nature. So I want to get your thoughts on what do you think is going on in China and where they're going in the next decade.
Well, I had Jim Rickards come and was one of the big speakers at my Passport to Freedom conference this past year in Cancun, and did a great job and talked about exactly that. And I think he's really the expert in many areas of what's going on there. I do spend a lot of time in Hong Kong, and I do see it increasingly becoming much more Chinese-focused and much less Western-focused. So in that regard, I think that they, again, realize they know where the money is. I read something that the average Chinese client of a Hong Kong bank is worth as much as 30 times more to the bank than the average Western customer. Well, forget FATCA, which is bad enough on its own. The reality is that most people in the West who are trying to do this stuff, compared to the people in the East who are doing it, are broke. When you look at people who are doing all these economic citizenship programs, spending $500,000, $1 million to become citizens of other countries, there aren't really very many Americans doing those. And those that are typically on the low end. And listen, I can kind of empathize with them. If I were to buy a citizenship, I wouldn't spend $1 million because I don't figure I need it that badly enough. But there are people who have the money in China and places like that where it's just easy. So the wealth certainly is in this part of the world. Hong Kong realizes that. China is increasingly more confident. I think you see what they're trying to do with some of these peacekeeping steps and rescuing people from boats. They want to really start to build up his image as a real superpower, not just a militaristic one or an economic one. So, I've always been a fan of China in the regards of the culture, that while it has its problems, no doubt, I think when you find Chinese culture pretty much anywhere, you find people who are really hardworking and very determined. And listen, if we had more of that and less of Greece, I think that we'd have a better situation. But all these people who are just jumping off the Chinese bandwagon, I wouldn't be so fast to do that, because I think it's a bandwagon that a lot of Westerners have been on in one way or the other for the last 20 years, whether it's property prices, whether it's whatever. And so far, people have been wrong.
So what do you tell people that want to move to China and start a business there? Do you advise that, or do you think that's not a good idea due to, I think, the overvaluation of the Chinese economy?
Well, I'm not an expert on starting businesses in China. I have some friends and contacts there who are lawyers and what have you about setting it up. Certainly there are restrictions in China. There is kind of a two-class system when it comes to hiring. So I'm not necessarily saying people should go and start a business in China. I think there's lots of opportunities there, especially if you have some connection to the culture. But Certainly I think that living in China, or at least having exposure there, is a good thing. I don't know if I could live there for the next 10 years. I've met a lot of guys who are in my position who are big fans of many parts of the country, and went there, and 3, 4, 5 years later they realized okay, there are some downsides that you don't see. But I think that having connections there, expanding your market into there, absolutely. It's a market that you have to be very cautious about. And I've often recommended the book, The $10 Trillion Prize. It's a great book to people who want to, learn about what it is that Chinese and Indian consumers do. I think that book would probably tell you more than we could discuss in a whole 100 podcasts, if that's something that you wanted to do, open a business.
So one of the other things that you have exposure to, that because you travel so much, is the currency exchange that you have to do when you're traveling from country to country. You also get exposure to the asset prices, and you notice whether the country is going through inflation or deflation, or et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Are the valuation on asset prices high in other developing countries you travel to, like in the U.S.?
Well, I mean, in terms of things like hard assets and properties and stuff like that, I certainly think that I get a little bit concerned anytime I hear someone say prices here never go down. I've heard that in Turkey recently. I've heard that in Malaysia, many Asian countries, that maybe the people selling don't remember the 97 crisis. I think that certainly there are values here. I have a friend of mine who is launching a fund with some advice from me on investing in Cambodian property, because I think that that's where some of the best values are in Asia. So I'm always cautious of whenever people say stuff can't go down. That's a cultural thing. That's a kind of a non-economic indicator that still gives you an idea of where things are going. But I think, getting out of the United States is important. Moving your assets outside of the United States or wherever you're from is important. We have a partnership with some guys. We run nomadgold.com. People can buy and store gold in Singapore. It's a pretty innovative service that they've set up. You can just buy as little as you want or as much as you want and take it out whenever you want. I think that's the kind of direction that people should be moving in. That's just simple, straightforward, accumulating assets overseas the easy way, both the hard assets you already have and perhaps shifting your property portfolio into some foreign exposure, and perhaps if you wanted to maintain some domestic exposure. But obviously, I think, I don't know about you, I think we might agree that when you hear real estate agents in the U.S. and other countries saying your home is your best investment, it kind of makes me roll my eyes.
Yeah, I hear that almost every day. I roll my eyes too. Buying a home is not really part of the American dream. It's not even. I don't consider it an investment. It's more like a personal choice in terms of lifestyle. That you want to buy a home because you want to have a nice lawn with a dog and some fence and maybe a pool. Other people that have money don't want to buy a home because they just want to not worry about maintenance and live in an apartment and pay rent. So I don't consider buying a home an investment. It's more like a personal choice.
Right. Well,
I agree with
that's the American dream you've been sold there, and so I think absolutely. If people can wake up to a new way of doing things, I think that a lot of the stuff we've been taught. I know you talk about this a lot. A lot of the stuff we've been taught, from go to college and rack up debt, go and buy your home. It's a lie largely for this 21st century economy. To see these politicians who've never had an original idea in their lives and who've never been on the cutting edge of anything, to hear Barack Obama come out and say we need to make it easier for everyone to go to college, my gosh. It sounds like this guy's giving a speech in the 1960s. Let's get with the times.
I go on Facebook, and almost all the time I see my friend that they bought their first home and a nice big house, and I'm pretty sure they did not put 20% down to buy that house, because, and I don't know if you know, but Northern Virginia, which is outside of the Washington, D.C. area, we're still in a housing bubble, so the housing here are way overvalued. So, and I have friends that are buying homes, and also, if you go on my Twitter page, I posted a picture. I got a flyer from the government, Department of Housing, that said they're willing to subsidize my mortgage if I buy a house now. And they even guarantee that my mortgage payment will be lower than my rent, which tells you that they're still trying to pumped the housing bubble here in this country, and they haven't learned a lesson from 2008.
Well, yeah, right, and that's the thing. I mean, this is not like we haven't learned our lesson from the War of 1812. This is, we haven't learned our lesson from what six years ago. And you're absolutely right. I mean, first of all, everybody in Northern Virginia is spending all that government contractor money. I mean, there's your housing bubble. It's a government bubble. It tells you all you need to know about how much waste there is in the federal government coming out of the shining city on the hill there. But of course, I mean, when you come to other countries, it's 10% down for locals, it's 20% or 30% or 40% down for foreigners. In some cases, it's much tighter than that. Nobody else really, outside of a few other Western countries, has heard of this 3% nonsense.
It's 0%, if you're lucky, if you have a good credit score.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the guys in China who are slaving away to, buy a house for cash because they want to get married. I mean, talk about a culture shock, but which country is going to be more in charge in 50 years? So...
Yeah, the Chinese have become the #1 buyer in real estate in this country in the past few years.
They realize they realize that hard assets are where it's at.
And also sending their kid to college in the United States, or they buy a house in this country and they live here, and then if they get a job, they stay there, or otherwise they just go back. That's what I've heard as well. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly a lot of Chinese, they do want their kids to be well educated because that's. I think they do believe, obviously, in education and getting lots of it because it's so competitive there. You can't get a job in Beijing unless you have a master's degree or sometimes even better. So that's one area where we may disagree on. It works for their culture right now because it still is somewhat a job culture, but it is a culture of fanning out. And this is what I'm talking about. I mean, we ought to be more like the Chinese, where we send our children to go and live in other places and kind of expand the family empire, expand the family business, gather intelligence to, help the family grow its wealth that the kids are a part of, the family's a part of. It's a very un-American concept. I mean, my parents didn't want to give me their business. They didn't want to invest in my business, so they just wanted, they said, hey, go do it on your own. In Asian countries, it's, let's fan out and see what we can do.
So one last question before I let you go. For people that want to leave the United States and move abroad, what advice do you have for them?
Well, the most important thing I talk about is imperfect action is always better than perfect inaction. So just sitting on the couch and hoping things will change isn't really the way to go. I say take the first step. Do one, put together a to-do list or put together some goals that you have and just cross them off. I talk about the Dave Ramsey debt snowball effect. I'm not a huge fan of all of Dave Ramsey's advice, but he's a very shrewd commentator, and he's made things so simple for people. Dave Ramsey's debt snowball is, take all your debts and pay off the smallest one first. Who cares about the interest rate? Not the most financially savvy thing to do, but it gives people the emotional enthusiasm to keep continuing with the plan. And so I say, all right, what do you need to accomplish to move overseas? Make a list and do the easiest thing first. Just get a win. In my case, that could be opening an offshore bank account. You can do it very easily. We have a book on how to open an offshore bank account, which includes specific banks you can go to, even without leaving your home. So that's a pretty easy thing if you want to internationalize. Go to our site, we get the book. But, I mean, just taking action is most important. If you want to do as I did and book a plane ticket and just, go to 6 countries you think you might like and check it out, spend a month there, do a 6-month tour, and you might just think, you might just end up never coming back.
Too bad Edward Snowden didn't contact you before he blew the whistle, because one of those things he didn't do was get another passport before exposing the NSA. Because when he blew the whistle, he was in Hong Kong, I believe.
Well, I mean, here's an honest thing that I wrote an article about a couple months ago, was how to get a Russian citizenship. That's something that entrepreneurs can go and do. If you're willing to move your business to Russia, you can become a Russian citizen. That's the kind of citizenship that I think a guy like that would have wanted. I think if he had a French citizenship, that John Kerry or whomever it was would have just picked up the phone and asked them to help out, and maybe they would have obliged, because so many people feel that they owe the U.S. a favor. But Absolutely. I mean, this is why being diversified in all ways is important. If you're a citizen of an empire, the other empire across the way looks pretty good. If you're a Russian citizen by yourself, you may think, hey, the U.S. is a good place. But if you're from the U.S., I think that China and Russia play an interesting role in kind of keeping the U.S. government in check.
And that's a great point. Well, Andrew, thank you for coming on for Wall Street from Main Street podcast. If people want to find out more about what you do and your service and your product, where can they go?
They go to nomadcapitalist.com. Like I said, we've got books, we've got courses to help people who are more DIY types, and we've started to offer, people want to reach out to folks on my team. If they want to send us an email with a specific question or a specific problem they have, we can try and help them do that as well. So I appreciate you helping us get out the word, and we've got tons of great stuff at nomadcapitalist.com, as well as, 700 or 800 different articles.
Okay, great. Well, Andrew, thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy your time in Malaysia.
Always my pleasure, Mo. Best to you.